It's going to be a conversation where we get into deep and dirty. And I haven't seen this before, and Steve has multiple times, so he's the man with all the answers. I have none. All my theories are wild and inaccurate at the moment, until possibly who incredibly right or incredibly wrong, depending how it goes. How'd you enjoy the episode on the rewatch?
So I'll be really careful when I say but there were some things that I noticed that maybe I didn't notice before. I think, yeah, there were some things that I wish they would have done a little differently, because I felt like they built up the Cole angle a lot. Like they leaned on it pretty heavily, I think, in episode 5, maybe 5 or 6.
Yep.
And they kind of just like left it.
Yeah, the episode 3 to 5, I'd say 2 to 5 even, felt very leaning on who is Cole. Like I even put it in one of my things, and then literally from the end of the 5th episode, it's been like, stop looking in this direction. It's not important, and which feels a bit cheap.
Yeah, I felt like they could have done something with that.
Yeah,
I don't know, something. I felt like the time jump, there could have been something in between.
Yeah, I think this sort of started to float some of those ideas in, but ultimately, this Cole feels very different from the Cole that we've had the whole way along. Even the guy that was being interviewed, with the beer cans and that kind of stuff. This Cole feels different again from him.
Yeah, he feels a little. I noticed that during this episode, they were kind of having a normal conversation, and I think even Marty mentioned something like, "You've never asked me a personal question before." So I wondered if it was more of he's grown up and he's matured, or he's kind of gotten past some of those things, like he's kind of expanded his worldview a little bit, maybe, or he's put some things behind him. But it seems like they've both evolved to something else.
It's kind of one of my theories. When I didn't think it at the time, but when you make notes and you go back through your notes to try and make sense of what you're going to say, you kind of start to put some things together or some ideas together in your head around then. And I think one of the ideas that I have, and it's actually borne up in one of the scenes, is that Rust and Marty have sort of met in the middle here somewhere. Like Marty's come from where he was to kind of the middle, and Coach come to him. It's when they kind of ask, how you doing? What you've been doing. They have been seeing anybody, and they both kind of tell half truths, half lies, and they basically show that the two of them been living exactly the same sad existence, in some ways, for a while.
How about those montages when they like the TV dinners and the eating dinner by yourself
and the internet and dating sites?
Pretty sad.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. It made it all the more sadder when Marty and Maggie have that proper conversation as well. When he's basically asking about the kids, which means he hasn't had anything to do with the kids in a very long time, which I think says an awful lot about him personally, and what he's going through. The fact that he quit the force and his reasons for doing that, it's all very sad. It's all very sad and part of his view. And of course, Russ doesn't look well or good in this episode.
No, he looks really weathered and beaten up, and just kind of like he's been abusing his body and drinking a lot. His skin looks really leathery, and I think that's good makeup, but he looks really bad.
Yeah, because he looked pretty tight for the previous lot of episodes before that. The man been working out, hitting the gym. They're hiding all that now.
Yeah,
maybe
his
there's hope for me yet.
Like ratty clothes, like old clothes.
But maybe we should go back to the start, because the last we've seen of them, Russ pulled Marty over and says, "Look, I think we need to talk." And we basically fast forward to them speaking in the bar, having a chat in the bar. How are you doing? And while there's not a lot happens in this, we do get a kind of brief rundown of where Rust has been.
I kind of wish we would have seen that. I would kind of wish there would have been an extra episode, or even like half an episode between, to kind of show his, like, even like maybe not like a montage, but maybe small clips of kind of, because he goes over questioning the one of the kids who was in the schools, and kind of finding him in New Orleans, and there's a lot of story that could be told.
Yeah,
That,
even little
but
bits the cut in between him following the case, because they do talk about the fact that he did question his sanity at points during the intervening period, but he obviously still had one eye on the case.
yeah, so it's almost like that's what was holding him together. That's what kept him going. Because if not for this, then who knows if he would still be alive.
Yeah, indeed. So you have this idea from Rust again that he's back to finish the job. That it kind of doesn't matter whether people went missing or who's guilty, who's innocent. The state police are never going to do anything about it, which does at least carry a through line from the last episode, which is kind of where he left and he get fired at that stage. And then he spends the next bit trying to convince Marty to get involved.
Yeah, I thought the whole, we owe a debt. I wonder if at least Cole feels like he should have known that that wasn't the end. Like he should have seen it at the camp. Like he should have known that Ledoux wasn't the end of it. Like it's almost like they just kind of all wanted to move on, and they kind of accepted that we caught him, we're done, and they kind of gave up on it because he got the accolades and everything. But now I think he feels guilty about that. Like he should have known that it wasn't over.
Yeah, so here's my question to you. Obviously, there's events still to happen here, but there's such a short amount of time left that I kind of feel like there's a lot of bits that they won't even bother going near. But I think the solving of these cases, actually from the very start, and getting credit from him, has never been important to Rust, because he was always going to see that justice was served in his way, regardless of how the prison time went or the punishment went. If you could get a confession out of somebody, that was okay. But he's been quite clearly fixing, people to do. And there's one setup in this episode as well, the Billy Lee Tuttle, about how did he die. Russ says he didn't do it, but again, it totally fits the pattern of, there's a crime being committed. Russ clearly convinced that he had something to do with it, and at some stage, he's no longer around to be a problem. So, I do think that while that idea is floated, I think that Rust actually comes to the realization but I don't actually know what happened here, and that's unsatisfying for him. He went back to Alaska. I think that's one of the reasons that he had to go back to Alaska, is he needed to go away and get some distance from where he was location-wise, to then say, is this important to know what happened here, or can I just, if I kill Billy Lee Tuttle, is that enough for me to kind of say? And ultimately, whether he did or he didn't, it wasn't enough for him, and he has to come back and finish it, and he can't do it by himself, because he's obviously been trying to do it in the background for a while. So he needs Marty, whether it's connections or otherwise, even if he's no longer in the force.
Yeah, one of the whole Tuttle thing. I either thought either he killed him or what happened, or what he said happened is what happened, which means that there's a bigger the scale grew, because then it's powerful people who could get rid of someone like him just because he may be blackmailed.
Indeed. And that's why ultimately I don't think who killed him is important in this bit, because the resolution is that Rust is back investigating this pretty strongly. I thought the lockup's really interesting. When they pull the shutter up and then they have what is an image that even I recognize from like promotional shots, of the Scars Carcosa, that kind of stuff. It's very much like the stage setting of the crime scenes, and even the churches and stuff. That kind of like montage, kind of like almost like an altar.
Yeah, it is.
In its own little way. And I thought, these are interesting parallels between, what's been happening previously, and then obviously Russ's state of mind. Involved or not doesn't really matter, but this stage he's sort of mimicking, as often happens, people are investigating very psychological crimes. They kind of, the reality and the crime merge into one.
Yeah, they almost become obsessive about it.
So yeah, I still have the idea that, regardless of everything that's happened to Marty, regardless of everything's happened to Rust, Marty was good police. And I think, Rust kind of feels that, which is why he needs him, or at least that's what we think at the moment. And Rust definitely plays the card, well, this isn't just my fault that this happened. You capped Ledoux, meaning we could never actually do anything with that. He basically says that had to be the end of that, because we needed to get off with the shooting of Ledoux. at the side. That's when you killed him. There
Oh
was
yeah.
nothing linking the Dorlang to Ledoux, really. There was no physical evidence at all. We just had to close that loop and say that's what was happening there. So
Oh yeah.
we get that idea that Marty is still yet to be convinced at that stage, though.
Yeah, and I wondered if Marty just if he knows deep down he just doesn't want to deal with it. He just kind of doesn't want to go back there, and because going back to that place means reliving a lot of other memories
Yeah.
that he probably doesn't want to remind himself happened, with his family and with what happened with his wife. So, but I do wonder if what happened to Marty and the mess that his life is the toll that he paid for being in law enforcement.
Yeah.
That's just like the toll that people pay. I mean, I know a lot of it was because of the decisions he made, but I wonder if part of it was because he was so wrapped up in his job that he had to be to perform. So I wonder if that was like the cost that people pay, that their personal life is in shambles.
It's worth thinking about because it's something I think that we as a very modern society are very in tune with. It's the idea that your work and your personal life and everything, while from the outside you try and keep them all separately, your life's interconnected in ways. So actually energy and time and all that kind of stuff is a finite resource. And if you channel your energy even into coping with certain bits of your life, that it has a knock-on effect, on your health and your well-being, etc., and everything else that happens. So it didn't change who Marty was as a person, but it certainly didn't help him. It gave him a need to blow off steam, in a way that he couldn't do at home, because actually his home life was pretty good. It was stable. It wasn't ever going to give him the release that probably he needed. The fact that his release tended to be alcohol meant that, he made poor decisions at that stage.
And I wonder if it's his personality that led him to make those choices, because Cole, or Cole was by himself a lot, or Rust was. He didn't really have anything. He just he was his obsession was the job and the cases, and he would obsess over all that.
But his stable home life was taken away from him. It wasn't actually, it wasn't a choice to leave. It wasn't. It was literally ripped away from him. So maybe, the reverse of that is, but what else have I got to put my time and the energy into? Instead of dealing with the trauma of that, I'm gonna do work and exhaust myself and put everything into that stage. It's a really interesting look at psychology. It'd be fascinating to kind of have a talk with Carrie Fukunaga about actually how much research went into developing the characters and the psychology of it all, rather than just kind of like, here's some archetypes and especially stereotypes of the region, all of that kind of stuff. I think they play in that a fair bit to kind of set up the mythos of it all. But I think at the heart of it, it's still quite a human story about loss and about dealing with trauma and all of those things, regardless of its job or otherwise. Yeah,
and growing older, and
and psyche and all of those things. So they go and they do. There actually isn't very much investigation in this episode, which I think makes it quite a. It almost feels like a bit of a filler episode in a lot of ways.
It did, yeah.
It's like getting the band back together. Okay, what are we going to do with this now that we get them back together? The only bit of detective work that we really have is this bit where they go and they meet one of the kids was in one of these schools, Todd Bollert, I think they call his name, and they ask him about the incidences, in and around the schools, and the fact that he sort of puts it down to sort of living in a dream, which I don't even think he believes.
I wonder if that was just his way of coping, is to believe that it was a dream and not, so he doesn't have to deal with it. Because he said they were wearing animal faces, so it must have been a dream. He doesn't want to process what happened to him, but obviously he's paying for it. I mean, he's still suffering in a different way, I'm sure, but he doesn't want to admit that what happened to him.
Well, even the fact that he can't remember the other kids' names kind of says, selective memory says that he's maybe going to filter some of this stuff out. But again, it's the first time we've had mention in a very long time of the man with the scars on his face, then cut to the lockup with a picture on the wall of the guy with the green ears, that kind of stuff. comes back up, and even, you know, the fact that, you know, the devil traps and all start to make an appearance again. It's all this imagery ties back in together, into what's happening, and that's pretty much the investigation for the episode, and that's kind of where we get to, I think, in terms of.
Well, yeah, the tape.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So, which I think the whole point of the tape is to get Marty to buy in. You know.
Yeah.
You know, but because I think it's preceded by the conversation between Maggie and Marty. It's just before the tape, I think, when he says, "Are you going to help him?" And he says, "Yes," and he goes, "Why? I have to." And it says it took some convincing, and then it cuts to the scene with the tape.
Yeah, that's what convinced him, was the tape.
Interesting that we see very little of the tape, which I think is obviously a very good, you know, move insofar as building the tension. We just look to see the reactions of the characters rather than the events of what happens, other than we hear the cries of Ray Fontenot, rather than actually the events, and chilling.
Yeah, I think that's more effective though than showing too much. Then it just becomes like a cheap way to shock you. But I think leaving it, showing you just enough, makes it worse, because then your imagination takes over and it's almost like worse than what they could have showed you.
Well, especially when you consider Marty talking about what made him quit the job. You know, one scene too many, just can't live your life seeing scenes like that, and yet his initial reaction was just to throw up. You know, and he couldn't cope with what he'd visually seen.
Yeah.
You know, and even asking Russ, you know, many times, did you watch it? He says, I had to, you know, I had to check for evidence and all that kind of stuff in a very clinical way. But again, this idea of Marty asked Russ, are you okay? Like, are you sure you're just not making this all up? Is this just your sanity? You know, have you lost your mind? This seems like all very circumspect. You know, there's no real evidence tying this all together rather than you. And Russ sort of says, you know, these are conversations I've definitely had with myself over the past while.
Yeah. Yeah, it was those interactions together. I like that Marty was carrying his gun around, and he asks him, "What are you packing, or what are you carrying?" You know, because he knew.
Yeah.
He was what he kind of had in mind. But what did you think about the locker? Because they talk about it a lot, and we finally get to look inside of it.
You mean Russ?
Like the storage locker? Yeah.
Oh, the storage locker. Yeah.
Like again, so it's almost like an altar.
Yeah, it's almost like an altar or a shrine. Now, I know an awful lot of detectives would have these cold case kind of things. It's very much trading on that trope that people would have, you know, with the pieces of string that connect characters together and all of that kind of stuff. But again, because this crime is a lot of religious symbolism, even the way that scars, yellow king, Carcosa, and all been written on the wall, it's almost like they've been scratched on the wall, or that they have, you know, it's almost like he's been locked in that. It's almost like somebody's been locked in a cell. You know, the kind of the scratchings on the inside of the prison cell. It has that sort of feel to it, and then matched with his obviously demeanor, dress, all that kind of stuff. You're kind of left like he has gone mad. In fact, it's pretty safe to assume that he's went to hell and back. We see sort of this rational person that's asking about other people, having like human interactions, which they haven't really had beforehand. Like, I think there's a scene in the car where they don't talk. Contrast that with earlier on the season when the interactions in the car were always kind of like philosophical or, you know, theoretical. You know, Drew used to drive Marty mad, but they just sit in silence now. And so their interactions are very much changed.
Yeah, and I wondered if that was kind of, you know, Cole if he's getting over things, or if he's moving on, or he's able to just have a normal conversation again after all these years.
It is a far cry from what we've kind of been set up for us, though. I kind of feel it's been wasted a little.
I also wondered if some of that with the interrogation was just kind of an act. You know, how much of that was just to throw them off, or to you know, kind of play the game.
Yeah, that certainly fits, because he is obviously a highly intelligent individual, and you know, I don't think Russ has ever met anybody who's equal in intelligence. So everybody's just playing with him. I mean, Marty sort of alludes with it. You know, you've been interrogating him, but really he's just been playing with you, like he's been playing with his food, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think obviously that's borne out by the very end scene where the two detectives are kind of traveling along and sort of seem to be broadly incompetent. You know, in certain ways, they don't have the information that we have, but you know, at a certain point, you, you do more.
Yeah, they do seem a little out of sorts, and it should be their backyard. It should
Yeah.
be what they're like their home turf, and they seem a little like they're the visiting team, not the home team.
Yeah, they're the people that are the outsiders. It seems like they're
Mhm.
they're lost where they are, etc. Um, but there was also that then discussion over Billy Lee Tuttle and the fact that Russ broke into his houses, you know,
Yeah,
and he just got caught and got away with it, which I thought was really sort of interesting.
yeah. I think the whole breaking and entering thing was a little. I think even he mentions. I realize I may have lost my mind, like I may have gone crazy, like you said.
Yeah,
It seemed a little like with the whole outfit and everything. It seemed a little. I don't know, a little too close to a little. It was a change from what we're used to.
yeah. And then they obviously Marty starts using his connections. The only other real bit that really stuck out to me, and I mean the scene where they followed the car and all that kind of stuff, but then they get the old chief inspector, lead detective, whatever his position was, captain probably is the right one, and Marty's manipulation of him,
Yeah,
which was a lot of fun.
McAllen,
Yeah,
the bottle of McAllen. Yeah,
it was
yeah,
great fun, especially in the boat because you could see exactly where that conversation was going. In fact, I think I could have wrote that scene myself.
yeah, yeah. You know where that's going. Yeah, the kind of and the golf game when they're playing golf and they're he's asking kind of trying to get information. He realizes that he's lying to him, so that
Yeah.
opens up more too.
Yeah, you're gonna need the jump leads or something like that. You're gonna need the
Yeah, the jumper cables. Yeah,
jump on cables. That's exactly what it was. That's a great line, because it set it up. Do you need me to? But no, we're good. No, you're gonna need them.
yeah, yeah.
Which
What'd you
kind
think
of
about the older lady that the woman who worked with the Tuttles all those years and her?
oh yes, her and her
Yeah,
daughter.
yeah,
Who you sort of started off thinking was an innocent bystander, but actually by the time we'd finished, you kind of give the idea actually no, she's more intrinsically involved in here, and actually her sanity might be, or lack of sanity now, could be something to do with the whole events, which
yeah.
leads me back to my central theory, which is Clark Peters again. Haven't seen Clark Peters since episode 1, and here we have a woman went mad. That sort of seems to lead me to think that's a congregation thing that she was part of, and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's my theory of where we're going. We didn't see Clark. Definitely thought we would have seen Clark Peters this episode to lead into the next, except we got to see the guy with the scars on his face instead, which again makes me think not really the big bad, just the most recognizable part of it. And some ways the one guy who didn't feel like he had to hide his face because he works in the middle of nowhere. He's not really going to be found, not really important, etc. So he doesn't feel like he needs to cover his face. But yeah, that whole situation of the daughter just, oh yeah, you can talk to her because really it's about money or what. But that's fine. But actually, once they poke and probe, then it's like, no, you need to get out. Mineral
Yeah.
deposits.
And I liked how she talked about, asked him about, well, did he have any other kids? And oh, he had a lot of kids.
For all the kids, yeah.
He used them once and he was done. And he had kids everywhere, and they kept a man's house was his like his secret to keep, like kind of thing where people didn't talk about it, like it was like an open secret.
And we got a couple more names of people that are associated with like the extended family, so to speak, which again feels very late to be given those. We could have had a few more of those floated about earlier on to kind of put it together. But there was the bit McCallum had said about Fontenot, that she'd went to live with her birth daddy, and that was one of the names. The Childress, Ted Childress was his name. The sheriff back then talked to him, but it was all spot on and kosher and sweet. And I think it was at that point that he realized, yeah, this isn't all above board. There's more going on here, and the fact that he's lied about that says that he knows more, than what's going on.
Yeah, now that we're talking about it, I wonder if they were willing to kill Tuttle. Let's say Tuttle was killed because they found the tape.
Mm-hmm.
You would figure that they'd be a little bit worried about a senile old lady who's willing to, who knows what she'll say. So,
which is why my theory of it being a congregation thing rather than, necessarily, it's a religious fervor kind of congregation thing. Seems that's why that jumps to my head, is because this wasn't just a couple of men sneaking a couple of kids off the woods. That this wasn't just that. This was something that was obviously drug fueled in some way, whether it's LSD or whatever it is, and that the congregation were kind of getting whipped up, and they kind of had these out of body experiences, a bit like the kids in the school and their meditation and that kind of stuff, when they were sort of put to sleep again, probably with gas or otherwise that was making them hallucinate, and doing all those things. So again, there's probably more than that woman is pretty much the take of it. I would say some of those women lost some kids, some of those women sort of had their own story to tell of how these people get into life, because it's not exactly clear why people like the Tuttles and the Childresses, etc., would have been involved with the link with the church. All of them that we've just seen at the very end of that episode, the guy cutting the lawn in the church on Sunday, he's from the parish. Like, I mean, at that stage, the two detectives should have twigged and went, actually, it might be worth getting out of the car.
Yeah, they seemed a little I don't know, uninterested. Like,
especially if you say you were like, you can't find somewhere, right? You've been looking for it for ages, can't find it map, yet you find this outcropping. You're looking for a church, and you meet a guy who's cutting grass who says he works for the parish. You definitely would have done something. I don't know. Like, that's that seems a bit odd to me.
I wonder if they just thought it was Cole's just like ramblings and they don't take it really seriously, and that's why they didn't really follow through with it, or is it because they're just incompetent, or combination?
But the investigation went out and seen the church. It wasn't just Cole and Marty, wasn't there? Like that was the end of the first episode. In the second episode, there was an investigation with pictures taken and all that kind of stuff with the mural. I'm pretty sure that's what happened in that episode. So, I mean, that was well documented. Sure, I don't think they'd believe a word that Cole says or has told them throughout the whole investigation. They'd be treating all of that very much with, a grain of salt. But they obviously have been working this case for a while in some capacity. They even have got as far as Marty or Cole or anything like that. They even raise questions about that and to come up with a kind of body of evidence. They've got the files that they put together themselves. So it just smacks of not very good. Not very good at this. Or maybe we've just seen two pretty good detectives doing it sort of better and failing, no doubt.
Yeah, maybe.
But the clues were there.
Yeah, they were definitely there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. The line when Marty said, "What was it cost?" And in my head it been, he didn't tell us what cost it was, and then it was. He did tell us that the girl was hand drugs, or man, it might have been try to dry a kid out in the microwave. You're like, oh Jesus.
Yeah.
That's rough. And like, I think there are only so many times you can walk into that kind of environment and go, oh, it's something like drug use or whatever. This is just the kind of life that I'm going to live to the day I die.
Yeah. It's I was surprised he only lasted a few more years after that, though. Seems like he would run it longer, because it seems like he had the business, but you wonder how busy he really was, because I think he asks him, "Are people going to be in and out all day long?" He said, "No, there's no one here." Doesn't sound like it's doing very well.
Well, he hasn't been using that office at all, and it's alluded to the fact that he could have been captain. He could have been rose to the very top. I think Marty would have played it too straight, though. I don't think he'd have been played the politics quite well enough for other people. But then it does intercut with the kind of the TV dinners, all of that kind of stuff that's going on in his life, and this absence of this steady stream of young women seems to have stopped for him anyway.
Yeah, seems like those days are over.
Yeah, they're gone. But yeah, it was a bit sad. But yes, the old woman did see the traps and said the word Carcosa as well. That's something else I've got written down. And then she screams, "Death is not the end, rejoice. Death is not the end, rejoice," which again speaks to sacrifice and worship kind of happening at the same time, which is kind of where I feel this all ties in together in a very roundabout way. But we shall see how that.
We'll see.
One episode to go. I was kind of glad it ended where it was, because I really thought I was going to get to the end of this episode and go, I just have to watch on. This has been left in a cliffhanger, or this has been left in a place where it's impossible. I'm just going to lie to Steve and tell him I didn't watch it.
Did you think about doing the last? Did you think about watching?
No, it was fun. Like, it didn't have that kind of impetus or drive to it, which it's sort of disappointing in one way, because we've had that for a number of episodes up to now. But maybe it is just the calm before the storm kind of thing. It's been a lot of very interesting character work. And development. The characters so well thought out and designed.
Strange episode. Now that looking back on it, now that I paid more attention to it, it was kind of a weird episode. There wasn't a whole lot there. I think a lot of it was just reestablishing Marty and Cole.
Yeah.
Kind of bringing them back together, and they're working together again. And Maggie, we kind of have she comes back in and she visits the bar.
See Rust.
Yeah, to see if Marty's in trouble, or kind of like don't let him get hurt kind of thing.
Strange scene though.
Yeah.
This curves from but not curves from. In fact, I thought it was interesting. One of the other things I'd written down is that Marty had assumed that Rust came back because of his guilt over Maggie. And he's like, no, it's nothing to do with that. Sorry to disappoint you. I forgot that even happened.
And he even asks him, have you talked to her? Because it's almost like he wondered, did they have something else after, or they still have something? But it's probably just his insecurities.
Yeah, although I have to say, when I was watching, I was like, could well have happened, especially when she walked back into the saloon at the end. But I think from that point, it was quite clear that they hadn't talked. They hadn't been in contact from that point. But up to that point, it was like, maybe they have been in contact. I don't know. She seemed to be a very different person. But not clearly remarried or settled down or anything, just.
Well, she had a ring on. I wondered if she has a husband. Kind of got the impression she has a husband now, or she's in a better place. But yeah, the daughters don't seem to have any contact with him.
No, at all. And one still troubled, and one is pretty much doing exactly as they were when we last seen them.
Yeah,
doing exactly the same things. Maybe I should just take stock of my own kids before I go to bed at night and say, right, this is what they were like at 14 and 15. Let's just see if they stay this way.
Yeah. It seems like, kind of a strange episode.
Yeah, I thought so as well. It didn't do what I thought it was going to do, which is kind of ratchet up the tension or ratchet up the pace is what I expected to happen. I thought we'd get real drive and thing, but I suppose that fits with the Louisiana vibe. There's a lot of shots where it does this panning thing over the top of the bayou. That's this very languid style of just kind of going across. Right, here's something happening. Let's do a nice pan and tracking shot across the bayou. Isn't it lovely? And I think that sort of is indicative of the state police's approach to solving crimes. Oh well, for a little drive. Yeah. Beautiful part of the world, like without a doubt, though. Like just gorgeous. One day.
One day. The shopping center that they go to when they go to Barty's office, that reminded me of the shopping center in I think the first episode that's empty and desolate. And I think he talks about this is a town that, what is it? This is a town in a dream or something like this is a town that someone dreamed of, or like. Do you think
that's like a commentary on modern America? I think modern society in general, like shopping malls 80s, 90s, early 2000s, big thing.
Mhm.
Now, much less so.
Not so much, yeah. I wondered if that, yeah, if there was a commentary on that, like kind of the way, the passage of time and the differences and things like that, like a more modern look to it. Yeah, it's yeah, really strange episode.
Yeah.
Looking back on it.
Yeah, definitely sticks out a bit from the previous ones that we've seen. I just kind of had this feeling of like, get on with it.
Yeah.
Like let's keep going here. Let's give us something really juicy or meaty. And the fact that they've got one episode to go, and they seem to have abandoned the fact that Cole could be responsible for it all. The fact that they've kind of thrown away the Maggie antagonist part of it. That's bit's done. It feels like they wasted some juicy story stuff, that they really could have done something in this episode with. It wouldn't have taken very much more, but maybe that was the intention. Maybe the intention was to just, okay, all of that stuff's happened. There was a lot of tension in the last episode, obviously. We reset it and say, actually, if not for Rust and Marty, this case was never going to get solved. The two detectives that are working on it, not interested, really.
What I would have liked is if because last episode they ended with "Follow me, we'll talk." If they'd have an episode in between that just showed bits and pieces of what both of their journey, like going to Alaska or looking into things or going to crime scenes or Maggie moving on, some just like bits and not just like just clips of them like off and on, just kind of like
they did the tiny little inset of the breaking and entering. But they could have made that a 5-10 minute sequence, of him caught or, what he found, finding the tape, going and watching it himself, or, doing, here's the director of me, him watching it and Marty watching it sort of in parallel at different times. All that kind of stuff could have been really interesting to do, especially if you showed Rust kind of being very clinical and kind of going, maybe wincing ever so slightly at one part of it, and Marty obviously thrown up at the end, to kind of do the change. But maybe the intent was to show them kind of converging as detectives and later life men and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of water under the bridge. But it definitely could have done something like you say, though.
I wonder if they had a story and they kind of ran out of space at the end and they kind of had to rush to kind of tie some things up to finish off. Maybe they had 8 episodes. Okay, you have 8 episodes, and they couldn't stretch it out another 1 or 2. I don't know. Maybe
you've got to remember, like as far as I remember, like you watched this at the time, isn't that right, Steve? This slow, languid pace was very unusual at that time. Yeah. Like this was not. It's very much the done thing now. This 8-10 episode run where you kind of draw things out very slowly and you just have enough ticking along the background. But True Detective, as far as I remember, was very much the first in its class. So actually, maybe it's not surprising that they didn't get it exactly right on first try.
Yeah.
And the fact that they just let the characters breathe for an episode maybe is some of its strength, ultimately. I don't know. We'll be able to revisit that next week, I suppose, more than anything else. But I suspect episode 7 will be an afterthought.
Yeah.
In terms of great episodes of this series.
Transitional.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Just kind of calm before the storm. Like the title of it's After You've Gone, which is, it's kind of funny, and it's like after you've gone, but it's like 12 years have passed.
Yeah,
they're back together.
Yeah, a lot of alcohol between them.
Yeah, yeah, the two of them drinking an awful lot. Maybe they should just spend the whole next episode pissed, and they get progressively more and more drunk, or more sober, depending on how it's going.
More Jameson too. Lots of Jameson.
Well, apparently Jameson's how you deal with really heavy trauma.
I guess. Get a case of that shit.
It should nearly be the advert.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it should be. I wonder if someone owns, like, I don't know if it was like an inside joke or if, I don't know. It's kind of, there's a lot of Jameson.
It is an interesting one. Like, I always think those things are brand deals, but Jameson ain't that big a company. For that to be a brand deal, Coca-Cola get brand deals, placement deals. Samsung, Apple, all Sony, of those companies. Yeah, exactly. They all do those kind of placement deals. But somebody obviously in crew just likes Jameson. In fact, it's quite possible McConaughey is the big Jameson fan.
Oh yeah, maybe.
McConaughey, I don't know if I said this before, but he's actually a well-known fan of Belfast.
Really?
So he comes here quite a lot just by himself, books himself in for a few days. For many years would be seen just sitting outside the hotel called Madison's.
Really?
Sitting outside, yeah, just for a few days when, every now and again he would come over. I don't know what he filmed here many years ago, but it obviously something about the way of life and the kind of easy going. But there was a hotel called Madison's which he used to stay in quite a lot. And it's quite possible that he got a taste for Jameson. But there's my wild speculation of the day.
Could be. I can see that happening.
Yeah. Cool dude.
Yeah.
Definitely two guys you wouldn't mind, going out for the night with,
Oh, no, it'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be a good time.
Home for 10:30 after a chocolate brownie with ice cream, and a Jameson.
That'd be the life. Yeah, that'd be fun.
But that's anything else for this episode?
No, it's kind of a light one. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we'd be done in about 20 minutes, I have to say.
Yeah, me too.
So, bravo. Well, 40 minutes, my God.
Yeah, not bad.
But this would be nice. If somebody's binge watching these back to back, this would be quite nice to kind of say, yeah, get on with it, guys. Just like the show.
There's not that much to talk about. Let's go.
Not that much to talk about. So that's us for next week. I've already given my theories for next week. We shall see. Clark Peters. If Clark Peters isn't in the next episode, I'm ratting.
Okay.
That's
We'll see.
All right. But you also know what's going to happen. So if anybody wants to find you, Steve, where could they find you?
At Steve Talks Books, Steve Talks Movies on YouTube, or at pagetune.com.
Nice. And I'll also plug pagetune.com on there as well, because you'll find me there as well alongside this channel on Twitter at 7 o'clock channel. So that's us for this week. Hope you can join us next week. We're back on Steve's channel next week for the big finale. 1,000 viewers probably for the big finale, something like that. We'll probably do about right. Yeah.
We might break the internet.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And aside from that, thanks very much for joining us, and speak again soon. Take care.